Stop for a second. Stop scrolling. Stop trying to stay busy. Stop pretending everything is fine. And really hear this. Someone you once thought was close has already forgotten you. Your name slipped right out of their mind. The thing you told them, the thing that kept you up at night, the pain that once made your chest tighten, to them, it may already be gone like it never happened. You sent a long message. You opened up. You said something you normally would never say out loud. And what came back was one dry word. Yeah, okay. Or worse, nothing at all. Just silence. And that silence hurts not because it's loud. It hurts because it touches the very thing you've suspected for a long time. Maybe I never mattered to them as much as I thought I did. That's the cold truth. But here's the part most people aren't calm enough to face. The most painful thing is not being forgotten. The most painful thing is realizing this. No one thinks about you nearly as much as you think about yourself. Not the way you lie awake at 2 a.m., replaying one thing you said. Not the way you remember every look, every reaction, every moment you felt ignored. Not the way you worry about whether your future is okay, whether you're on the right path, whether you're good enough, lovable enough, worthy enough. Other people do not live inside your mind the way you think they do. And here's the strange part. The moment you truly realize that might be the most freeing moment of your life. Because maybe for a long time, you've been living like someone standing on a stage. You speak like someone is scoring you. You post something and wait to see how people react. You stay silent when you should speak because you're afraid of being judged. You keep editing yourself. You keep performing for an invisible audience you believe is watching your every move. But what if that audience was never really there? What if the stage you've been afraid of all this time is almost empty? What if most people are just busy living their own story, dealing with their own pain, obsessing over their own mistakes, and you were never the center of their mind the way you imagined? That's not bad news. That's the first door to freedom. If you've ever felt like you remember people more than they remember you, comment 1 below. To admit one simple truth, you've been exhausted for a long time, waiting for a kind of care that was never going to show up the way you hoped. And maybe today is the day you finally start seeing things differently. Think about it. What hurts isn't just that someone forgot your birthday. It isn't just that they never texted back. It isn't just that you shared something important, and the next day they didn't even remember it. If it were only one isolated action, it wouldn't cut this deep. What really hurts is the meaning you attach to it. Someone goes quiet, and in your head it becomes, I must not matter that much. Someone forgets, and inside you it sounds like, I must not be worth remembering. Someone doesn't ask if you're okay, and you start thinking, maybe no one really cares about me at all. This is where so many people get trapped. They think they're hurting because other people are careless. But the deepest pain comes from something else. It comes from the fact that they quietly handed their self-worth over to other people's reactions a long time ago. You wait for a text, not just because you want to talk. You wait for it like on a whim that you mean something in someone's life. You wait for someone to remember what you said, not just because you want to feel heard. You wait for it like confirmation that your feelings have weight. You wait for someone to ask if you're okay, not just because you need care. You wait for it like a certificate that your existence isn't something people can take or leave. That's why other people's indifference can stab so deep. Not because it's powerful, but because you let it touch the most fragile part of you. And here's the harder truth. A lot of people don't just want to be loved. They want to be validated. They don't just want to matter in someone else's life. They want that place in someone's life to prove that they have value. So every time they're forgotten, they don't just feel sad. They feel smaller. Every time they don't get the response they hoped for, they don't just feel disappointed. They feel lesser. Every time they're met with silence, they don't just feel lonely. They feel erased. But remember this. Your value was never created by someone else remembering you. Your value does not rise just because someone replies faster. And it does not disappear just because someone isn't deep enough to see you clearly. The problem is that you may have spent too long living in a system of emotional approval. A post gets little attention, and you think you're not interesting enough. A text goes unanswered, and you think you're being dismissed. You get overlooked in a conversation, and suddenly you start doubting your own presence. You don't even realize you've put your whole life in the hands of fragile things, reactions, views, messages, looks, priority, praise. And all of those things change with people's moods, circumstances, limitations, and wounds. You placed your deepest sense of worth into the most unstable thing in the world, human attention. How could that not hurt? That's why this video isn't just about no one caring. It's about the trap of living through other people's eyes. Because when your worth depends on outside reactions, you live like someone waiting for a grade. You are not really living, you're waiting to be scored. And that is an exhausting way to exist. Not because you work too hard, not because your life is too demanding, but because your heart is always turned outward, waiting for someone to place a little validation in it, so you can finally feel okay. Life does not work that way. People are not stable enough for that. Human affection is not consistent enough for that. And you should not keep handing the keys to your inner life over to something that unreliable. Real maturity begins the moment you face this head on. I cannot keep letting my sense of worth depend on who remembers me today. That isn't self-respect. That's self-abandonment. This is the part that makes people feel sad and relieved at the same time. People don't forget you because you're worthless. They don't fail to ask if you're okay because they're evil. They don't forget what you said yesterday because you meant nothing. A lot of the time, the reason is much simpler. They're busy living their own life. They're worried about money, about work, about their kids, about how they look, about one comment someone made that still got under their skin, about whether they did enough today, about whether the person they like is pulling away, about the future, about the past, about themselves. In the movie of their life, they are the main character. And in the movie of your life, you are the main character. It sounds cold, but really, it's just human nature. Everyone lives at the center of their own experience. That's why you can remember one embarrassing thing you said with crystal clarity, while the person who heard it probably doesn't even remember what color shirt you were wearing. That's why you can obsess for weeks over something you posted that got no reaction, while most people glanced at it for 2 seconds and went right back to their own worries. That's why you think the whole world is staring at your failure, while everyone else is busy trying to hide their own fear of failure. You're like a performer terrified of dropping the ball in front of the crowd. But here's what changes everything. The crowd you're afraid of might be nearly gone. It's not that no one sees you. It's that no one sees you nearly as much as you think they do. And once you understand that, a lot of chains start falling off. You stop spending hours analyzing what people think about one small mistake. You stop editing every sentence out of fear of judgment. You stop living like there's an invisible panel somewhere grading your life. Because the truth is, that panel is busy being afraid of getting judged too. Everyone is worried about their own performance. Everyone is afraid they're not enough. Everyone is trying not to reveal their weak spots. Everyone is stuck in their own endless inner conversation. You are not being watched by the whole world. You're just overestimating your role inside other people's minds. And that matters, because the moment you keep believing everyone is watching you, you start living defensively. You stop trying. You stop risking. You stop being different. You stop starting the thing you really want. You stop leaving what you've tolerated for too long. You stop speaking up. You stop saying no. You stop being real. All because of an imaginary audience. If you've spent too much of your life living for other people's eyes, comment one below and mark this moment as a line in the sand. A moment where you start separating real life from the fake stage inside your head. And that's where everything starts to shift. No one can stay trapped in approval seeking without paying for it. That price may not show up right away, but it always comes. At first, you think you're just being mature. You stay quiet to keep the peace. You agree a little so other people stay happy. You hold back so things don't get tense. You try to be kind, easygoing, understanding. Sounds beautiful, right? But when kindness has no boundaries, it slowly turns into self-erasure. You get used to being pleasant, agreeable, convenient, safe, the person who never makes people uncomfortable. And little by little, you become a version of yourself that is easy to accept, but very far from who you really are. You stop saying what you actually think. You stop refusing what you really don't want. You stop showing your differences. You stop being the person who might disappoint someone. A lot of people call that maturity, but it isn't. A lot of the time, it's fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being left behind, fear of being called selfish, fear of seeming difficult, fear of losing connection, fear of no longer being loved. And from that fear, you start wearing very attractive masks. The good child, the dependable friend, the easy partner, the employee who causes no trouble, the nice person who always lets things slide, the one who never makes a mess. The problem is, those roles are rewarded with approval, but paid for with your life force. You smile when you don't want to smile. You nod when something inside you is saying no. You keep showing up in places that drain you. You reply to messages you do not want to answer. You maintain relationships because you feel bad hurting someone. You protect your image in other people's eyes so much that eventually you stop recognizing your own face. And one day, you feel exhausted. Not only because other people are too much, but because you've spent too long abandoning yourself in exchange for approval. That's the real cost. Burnout, resentment, emptiness, and deep down, the feeling that you're living a life that doesn't fully belong to you. You give a lot, but never feel full. You show up a lot, but never feel seen. You try hard, but never feel peace. Because what you're chasing was never going to have a bottom. Approval is a hole that never fills, if deep inside you still believe you only have value when someone else confirms it. Today they praise you, and you feel lighter. Tomorrow they turn cold, and you crash. Today they choose you, and you feel important. Tomorrow they focus elsewhere, and you feel abandoned again. That kind of life is painfully unstable. Not because people are bad, but because you handed the steering wheel of your emotional world to people who are still trying to figure out their own. You cannot build inner stability on top of other people's shifting reactions. At some point, you have to choose. Do you keep being the easy version of yourself, just to be kept around? Or do you become honest enough to be yourself, even if not everyone stays? That is not a small question. That question decides the quality of your entire life. This is the part many people do not want to hear, but it's also the most freeing. What's the bad news? No one is coming to save you. There is no magical day when the whole world finally wakes up to your value and starts treating you exactly the way you deserve. There is no perfect person walking into your life to repair every torn place inside you. There is no apology powerful enough to heal every year you spent being overlooked. There is no round of applause loud enough to remove your self-doubt if you still haven't learned to stand by yourself. That's the bad news. But here's the good news, and it's stronger. No one really has the authority to define you either. The person who forgot you does not get to decide whether you are worth remembering. The person who didn't answer you does not get to decide whether you have value. The person who failed to see you clearly does not get to conclude that you are not worth seeing. Their indifference is not a verdict on who you are. It is only a reflection of their limits, their attention, their depth, their maturity, their circumstances, their wounds. A lot of people have handed the power of self-definition to people who are not even self-aware enough to understand themselves. That is a terrible trade. You let one cold look decide whether you are lovable. You let someone's silence decide whether you matter. You let one failed relationship decide whether you deserve love. You let one moment of being forgotten decide whether you are important. Why? Why does that kind of power belong to them? Because deep down, maybe you are still hoping someone else will come and confirm what you were supposed to learn to see for yourself. But from this moment on, that has to change. You do not need more people to rescue you. You need to stop waiting to be rescued. You do not need more people to define you. You need to take that power back. This is the moment you stop standing outside the door of your own life, waiting for someone to invite you in. This is the moment you open the door yourself. You step in yourself. You take the wheel yourself. That is not selfishness. That is maturity. Because mature people do not live on the hope that one day someone will fully understand them and behave perfectly. Mature people understand that most human beings can only give within the limits of their awareness and their wounds. So instead of waiting, they build an inner life strong enough not to be thrown around by every cold reaction, every forgotten message, every silence from someone else. This is not about becoming numb. It's about stopping your life from being controlled by things you do not control. And once that clicks, you get stronger fast. A lot of people hear the phrase, "no one really cares," and feel their heart drop. But that's because they only see the loss. They haven't seen the power in it yet. Think about it this way. If people are not paying nearly as much attention to you as you thought, then what exactly are you so afraid of? Afraid of being laughed at? People laugh for a moment, then go back to their own life. Afraid of being judged? People judge you through the filter of their own mind, then move on to worry about themselves again. Afraid of failing in front of everyone? Everyone is already busy failing inside their own head. Afraid of doing something different? Most people are not even focused enough to remember what you did 3 days ago. That is the power of invisibility. The moment you accept that you are not the center of other people's attention, you become free in a very real way. You start trying new things. You say the thing you used to swallow. You begin again after everything falls apart. You change direction even when people don't get it. You do what you actually want without needing approval from some imaginary board. You live like the person responsible for your life, not like someone asking permission to exist. And that's what most people miss. What makes you weak is not that other people forget you. What makes you weak is living like you are constantly being watched. Once you stop performing, you finally have energy to live. Once you stop worrying about what the audience thinks, you finally have the courage to step off the fake stage. Once you stop editing every part of yourself to fit the crowd, you can finally hear your real voice. No stage, no performance, no judges, no score. Just one question that actually matters. How do I really want to live? That question is worth more than praise. If you're ready to stop performing and start living more honestly from today on, comment 1 below as a promise to yourself. Nothing long, nothing fancy, just a simple way to tell yourself, from this point on, I will live less for other people's eyes and more from the truth inside me. Because that's where real power begins. In the end, this is the biggest lesson of all. It's not, don't need anyone. It's not, be cold. It's not, stop caring about everything. It's this, take the wheel of your own life. You do not need to wait for someone to fully understand you before you start living right. You do not need to wait for support before you dare to move. You do not need to wait for someone to choose you before believing you have value. You do not need to wait for the world to become kinder before you stop abandoning yourself. Life does not wait for people to feel completely ready before it begins. You start while you're still scared. You start while you're still confused. You start while no one is clapping. You start while no one even sees you yet. That is maturity. Maturity is when you stop asking, who is going to save me? And start asking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Maturity is when you stop asking, do they approve of me? And start asking, am I living in alignment with what I know is true? Maturity is when you stop building tomorrow on the hope that someone will treat you better today, and start building it on choice, discipline, boundaries, self-respect, and honesty with yourself. You want to change jobs? Stop sitting there waiting for someone to say you can do it. Prepare, learn, make a plan, move. You want to leave a relationship that keeps shrinking you? Stop waiting for the other person to suddenly become someone else. Look at the truth, set the boundary, choose yourself. You want to live more honestly? Stop waiting for some perfect version of you to arrive. Start with one small move. Explain less, ask permission less, perform less, wait less. No one can hold the wheel for you. You can receive advice. You can receive love. You can receive support. But in the end, the person deciding the direction is still you. And that is good news. Because if you are the one driving, then even if people forget you today, even if someone walks away tomorrow, even if next week you're misunderstood, your life does not stop because of that. You keep going. You keep building. You keep growing. You keep becoming the person you were meant to become. Not loudly, not for show, just steady. That is something very few people ever truly have, and it is something no one can give you except you. When you start living honestly, some people will leave. The ones who are comfortable with your constant softness will say you've changed. The ones who benefited from your silence will suddenly find you difficult. The ones who only liked the version of you that was easy to predict, easy to manage, easy to please, will no longer feel comfortable once you begin to have boundaries, opinions, and your own direction. Let them leave. That departure is not always a loss. A lot of the time, It is proof that you finally stopped selling yourself cheap just to hold on to a connection that was never real. You are not losing the people meant for you. You are losing the people meant for your performance. And in return, you get the most valuable thing back. Yourself. The real you. Not perfect. Not always strong. Sometimes messy. Sometimes tired. Sometimes scared. Sometimes forced to begin again. But real. No longer living like a side character in your own life. No longer waiting for applause from ghosts that were never really there. No longer building your whole life around whether someone remembers you or not. Realizing that no one truly thinks about you that much is not a tragedy. It is a beginning. The beginning of a more mature kind of freedom. The beginning of a deeper kind of peace that no longer depends on other people's reactions. The beginning of a life where you stop asking permission to be yourself. From today on, try it. Try failing. Try starting. Try being different. Try telling the truth. Try walking away from what keeps making you smaller. Try living a more honest life, even if it is not polished yet, not smooth yet, not perfect yet. Because the only approval you truly need does not come from people who forget, go silent, or stay too busy with their own lives. It comes from the person you see in the mirror every morning. That person knows what you've been through, knows how long you endured, knows how hard you tried, knows how long you waited, and knows that it is time to stop waiting now. This life is yours. No one can live it for you. No one can face the consequences for you. No one can rewrite your story for you. So take all your power back. Stop performing. Stop waiting to be chosen. Stop tying your worth to other people's memory, reactions, and attention. And start living, for real, deeply, clearly, as your own. And if you want to keep going deeper with this channel, into the truths that make you stronger, clearer, and more grounded in your own worth, subscribe right now. Because maybe not many people really think about you the way you once hoped. But the moment you start caring for your own life the right way, everything already begins to change.